According to news agency reports received at Lloyd's January 8, 1979, French motor tanker Betelgeuse, 61,766 tons gross, sustained 2 explosions while discharging cargo at Gulf Oil Ocean Terminal Bantry shortly before 0100 hours today. First explosion cut her in 2, and second, more powerful, followed almost immediately after. Reported that her 42 crew feared dead, together with 5 Gulf Oil shift employees. On the information received, SMIT TAK International Salvage Company, Rotterdam, goes into action.
SMIT Lloyd 107, SMIT Lloyd 107.
Goedemorgen,
This is SMIT Radio.
Barracuda, kantoor over.
Just had a tail about this explosion of that tank.
Willen jullie
At the moment we're preparing the Barracuda
Good morning,
in
Captain.
the slots. We're putting on a hell of a lot of special sort of equipment, and we expect her to sail within a couple of hours directly to Bantry Bay.
Southwestern Ireland.
The salvage vessel Barracuda proceeds at full speed for Bantry Bay, Ireland. According to news agency reports received at Lloyd's January 8, 1979, French motor tanker Betelgeuse, 61,766 tons gross, sustained 2 explosions while discharging cargo at Gulf Oil Ocean Terminal Bantry shortly before 0100 hours today. First explosion cut her in 2, and second, more powerful, followed almost immediately after. Reported that her 42 crew feared dead, together with 5 Gulf Oil shift employees. On the information received, SMIT TAK International Salvage Company, Rotterdam, goes into action.
SMIT Lloyd 107, SMIT Lloyd 107.
Goedemorgen,
This is SMIT Radio.
Barracuda, kantoor over.
Just had a tail about this explosion of that tank.
Willen jullie
At the moment we're preparing the Barracuda
Good morning,
in
Captain.
the slots. We're putting on a hell of a lot of special sort of equipment, and we expect her to sail within a couple of hours directly to Bantry Bay.
Southwestern Ireland.
The salvage vessel Barracuda proceeds at full speed for Bantry Bay, Ireland.
Barracuda, go control. You read. Go control, Barracuda.
Only the bow of the Betelgeuse is visible above the water. The salvage crew set out to make a first inspection of the stricken tanker. Crude oil covers the deck. Gas in the remaining tanks threatens another, more devastating explosion. 2/3 of the ship have sunk in deep water next to the jetty. The forepart is inclined at an angle of 35 degrees. To keep the forepart in position and prevent damage to the jetty, a towing wire is rigged between the bow of the Betelgeuse and the SMIT Lloyd 107, a powerful supply tug with a bollard pull of 100 tons. 40 meters down, in total darkness, surrounded by the mournful groans of the torn hull, twisting in the tide. First underwater inspections show that the hull is not broken in two, but rather into three equal sections. The forepart seems to be separated from the midship. The aft part, with the engine room, has sunk by its own weight into 15 meters of mud. Taking advantage of the relatively calm weather, valves, hoses, high-pressure hydraulic lines, and special hydraulic cargo safety pumps are brought aboard. While the others are busy topside, the divers continue their inspection of the wreck.
The old butter was let back again.
Oh, the same like Guinness.
Eh?
Same as Guinness.
Yeah, but is it closed again? Yeah?
According to the information available, it seems very possible that the bow section is only lightly attached to the rest of the ship. Therefore, mobile pumps ballast the forepeak to adjust the trim.
Laat er maar 3 duimen bij komen.
Heb je nou wel opzij bij? Ja, ja. Nou, dan wil hij erin. Kijk uit, kijk hier onder. Ga je hem opvakken?
Heel klein, hè? Lijkt het hier.
Ja, go control. The Brennan Bay is Ewing is anchor. And then we all start pulling. SMIT Lloyd 107,
The SMIT Lloyd 107 will try to tow off the bow section.
Everybody just left the Betelgeuse. Everybody just left Betelgeuse, so you can start pulling now. You can start pulling now. Over.
Barracuda, SMIT Lloyd 107, Roger, everybody left Betelgeuse, so we'll just decrease power and start pulling.
Barracuda, Roger.
Roger.
Hold on.
11,000 horsepower at work.
Because the aft part of the forepart wants to go up too much, and maybe she's hooked. Just about it. Same by angle of inclination, over.
The bow section is still entangled with the rest of the wreckage. Now one of the alternative plans is put into action. The remaining crude oil in the bow section must be discharged. 500 meters of open water separate the casualty from the tank farm on Whiddy Island. Because the jetty's submarine pipelines cannot be used, a floating hose has to be rigged to pump the cargo to the oil terminal storage tanks. By pumping out the oil, the forepart is lightened, further pollution minimized, and 10,000 tons of cargo saved. The naval architect and the salvage inspector work out the highly technical details of unloading the tanks. High-pressure hydraulic lines to the safety pumps are connected up. The pumps have been specially designed to be inserted into ship's Butterworth holes. Very carefully, the pumps are lowered into place. Although inert gas is used, the danger of explosion is ever present. The hydraulic power packs are stationed aboard the Barracuda, standing at a safe distance off the tanker. The final connections are made, and pumping out the cargo begins. Pumping continues day and night until all the remaining cargo is safely ashore. Seawater is now pumped into the forepeak and ballast tanks to break the bow section free. Ashore, any movement of the ship is precisely monitored.
We are able to detect here some fore and aft motion of about, well, in this instance, it looks about like a foot to 18 inches. It's moving up and down vertically about 15 inches, but it's also moving fore and aft about a foot to 18 inches.
Then, a serious development occurs. Bottom plating of the port side wing and center tank 2 ripped open as the bow section broke loose. Seawater rushed in, and she developed a dangerous list to port. At this point, anything could happen. The worst being that the lightened bow section could flip over and lurch into the jetty. Proper action must be taken at once. Aboard the Barracuda, lids of ventilation pipes taken from the bow section are fitted with air hose couplings. The plan is to force compressed air into the tidal tanks to displace water and correct the list. The next morning, the bow section is under control and is boarded for final inspection. The first stage of this enormous operation has been successfully completed, and SMIT TAK proudly raises the flag. With the Barracuda alongside to keep a constant air pressure in the ripped hull, the 107 tows the bow section safely away. The midsection will be raised by using a combination of shear legs, compressed air, and polystyrene spheres. The compressed air and the shear legs will give a controlled lifting. Because the polystyrene floats, inside the wreck it packs tightly from the top downwards, thus forcing out the water and creating buoyancy. But that is still a long way off. The crack, splitting the midsection from the aft part, will have to be completely cut through. Explosives are used to force apart the two remaining sections. Divers prepare to cut access openings for the polystyrene hoses and holes in the hull for the compressed air to escape during the raising. In Rotterdam, 200 tons of polystyrene is processed for the raising. The raw material, with a consistency of coarse sugar, is expanded by steam to form billions of tiny air-encasing spheres. These tiny objects will assist in lifting the midsection. The polystyrene is blown into a seagoing barge bound for Bantry Bay. At the same time, divers patch openings in the hull of the midsection prior to pumping in the polystyrene and air. It's a tricky job at up to 40 meters depth in poor visibility. The barge carrying the polystyrene is brought into position over the midship. Hoses are rigged for pumping the spheres. The pumping starts. The pumping continues for 2 weeks. Finally, the required buoyancy is achieved. To be sure that all of the entangled wreckage between the two sections has been cut through, it is decided to use a heavy anchor chain to saw through any remaining bottom plates. The shear legs TAK Lift 1 will do the job. brute force and a delicate touch combine to rip apart the obstructing steel. The tonnage indicator shows a rapid fall-off in tension, which could mean success. Divers go down to check. The cut is clean. Now the chain is looped under the midsection to assist in the lifting. Air hoses are coupled. Compressed air is forced into the hull. The lifting of the midsection starts. After 7 months on the bottom, the midsection floats. Everything has gone according to plan. TAK Lift 1 must use all her lifting capacity during the tow to shallow water. The Barracuda rides alongside, continuously pumping in compressed air to maintain safe buoyancy. Because of the tanker's tremendous draft and dangerous condition, a submersible pontoon is brought in to lift and transport the midsection out of Bantry Bay. After 3 months of patching, water is pumped out to raise the midsection as high as possible. It is discovered that a bottom plate is bent back like an open sardine can and hangs down 15 meters, making it necessary for the midsection to be loaded athwartships on the pontoon. At night, the pontoon is submerged and the midsection towed over into position. The next morning, the enormous structure is securely in place and ready to go. So far, so good. 2 down, 1 to go. But the next job will be more difficult than the 2 already accomplished combined. The aft, weighing 7,500 tons. At the SMIT TAK office in Rotterdam, the salvage directors explained the planned operation to the representative of the West of England P&I Club.
That most of the tanks in the engine room are severely damaged. The amount of buoyancy which we need to lift this aft part cannot be created in the tanks which are left in the double bottom, even if we should fill them all with polystyrene or air. And that's the reason why our technical department with Mr. Van Wijk came up with this concept of 4 lifting barges, 2 hydraulic, 2 conventional ones with winches and tackles to raise this aft part of 7,500 tons with a total lifting capacity of 11,000 tons. But as you know, the aft part sunk in the mud 15 meters up till here. For this reason, we have to dredge around the remaining aft part in order to get the wires underneath.
Dredging continues for 30 days until 15,000 cubic meters of mud have been removed from around the wreck. At the same time, factories all over Western Europe are producing custom-designed equipment for the hoisting barges. Bow rollers, wires, sheaves, monkey faces, yokes, pulling shafts, winches, shackles, compensating wires, on such a scale as have never been used before on a salvage operation. All this equipment must be manufactured within 4 months. Hydraulic pulling machines of a unique design are also specially made for this final lift. Barge Giant 21, fitted with the hydraulic hoisting gear, underway to Bantry. Ten kilometers of high-tension steel wires are made to order, varying in circumference from 44 up to 100 millimeters. This sling has a braking strength of 630 tons. It is 140 meters long and weighs 6.5 tons. On location, 3 sets of 8 slings are pulled underneath the wreck and connected up again to the 4 lifting barges. The 2 conventional winch barges and the 2 hydraulic hoisting barges, total lifting capacity 11,000 tons, safe working load, are anchored in position above the aft ship. One of the 24 slings which must pull the wreck to the surface is heaved in over the bow roller and secured to the pulling shaft. This shackle weighs more than 200 kilos. Not an easy job, working with such giant gear. With all the cables laid, the barges must be ballasted prior to hoisting. Steel plates are lowered into position between the wreck and the cables. When the barges start to pull, these plates will prevent the cables from biting into the weakened hull. Transducers are attached to the wreck to register all movement during the lifting. Zero hour. This is the climax of months of preparation. Everything is ready for the lift. The operation manager checks with each barge before the countdown.
Zijn 21, zijn 22, Dering en Jasmin Turtle.
Zijn jullie klaar om te hijsen? Over.
21 is klaar. 22 klaar.
Ja, de Jasmin klaar om te hijsen. Dering Tuttle klaar om te hijsen.
Goed, dan
5 seconden na nu gaan we hijsen. 1.
2, 3, 4 en nu.
"40 meters below, the wreck stirs in her muddy bed, and then, very, very slowly, starts her upward journey.
Ja, dit. Hou jij onze rollen een beetje ook in de gaten zo? Dan kijken wij naar jouw rollen.
The shafts locked to the slings are drawn back by the specially designed pulling machines. Bogies on rails support the shaft's weight. There is no way back now. The 4 barges must hoist in synchronization to keep the wreck from sliding out of the slings.
21, 22, even opletten. Geef zo een seintje door.
In the late morning of the first day, the aft part has raised clear of the sea bottom. This allows the barges, with the wreck suspended beneath, to move away from the jetty and take up an ideal position for the remainder of the operation.
Ja, van de Meer op de 21. Hoeveel water heb je nog ongeveer uit te pompen?
Central Control monitors each barge.
Ben je 1 wat langzamer aan of 2 harder? Kijk maar wat je doet.
Both winch barges are equipped with 5 kilometers of steel wire.
Alle 2 kunnen ze weer draaien aan. Ze zijn precies gelijk.
Any minute now. The crewman reports the first sign of the wreck surfacing.
Wat hebben jullie er zo respectievelijk op staan? Daring Turtle, wat heb jij erop staan?
De Daring Turtle 2280 ton. Tasmin digitaal 2290 en een kwartsgraad over stuurboord. Zijand 21 980 ton. 280 bar oplopend naar 300 bar is 1390 ton. 22 digitaal 1460 ton. Hydraulische druk 280 bar oplopend naar 285 is ongeveer 1225 ton.
Hoisting continues steadily. A team of tugs tows the partially surfaced aft ship between the barges to a sheltered anchorage in the lee of Whiddy Island.
Deze positie blijven, ja.
Cracks in the hull are patched so that the engine room can be pumped dry to create more buoyancy. Pumps are lowered inside the wreck. Slowly but surely, the combination of hoisting and pumping does the trick. This is the engine room. The aft section has been raised high enough out of the water to be able to carry on with the final stage. The semi-submersible pontoon, Giant 1, is again brought into position. The buoyancy chambers are flooded to sink her in 23 meters of water. With the 2 hydraulic lifting barges assisting to control stability, Giant 1 empties her tanks and slowly brings the aft section out, high and dry. It has taken more than a year and a half to raise the Betelgeuse. 573 days, non-stop, of skill, sweat, and guts for these men to accomplish the largest wreck removal of all time.